Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we have the good doctor, Georgette Bennett, on the line as well, Rev.
Okay, so I have to begin with a...
Reverend Bernard, how are you?
I am doing well, recovering as I can from the full hip replacement surgery I just had. So,
okay. Yeah.
I'm coming along, gaining greater mobility. I'm so sorry. I was looking forward to the event, especially meeting up again with Henry Louis Gates. And we worked together on a project that he did for PBS.
Yeah. And I haven't seen you since the program that we did at the Council on Foreign Relations. So I was looking forward to seeing you again. Yeah. And I hope that will happen sometime soon after you're fully recovered from your hip replacement.
We believe that. I've been getting around, but being careful anyway. So great to have you on the program. Thank you again.
I didn't tell her anything about the hip replacement because I don't want to violate HIPAA rules. So that's a good pun, by the way. That's a good pun there.
Except that you're not subject to HIPAA rules.
Yeah. Well, I respect confidence, confidentiality.
There you go.
But he is subject to Jewish rules.
Here we go.
Jewish rules.
Here we go.
Because our scriptures tell us that we are not permitted to engage in gossip. So he was being a very good Jew by not telling me about your hip replacement.
Yeah. Rev, always be careful with someone who was married to a rabbi. They quote scripture, the rules. Yeah.
I have someone who's married to a reverend. What can I do?
Yeah. You mean that's you? You're married to a reverend.
No, my wife.
She's a reverend. Yeah, she's a reverend. All right, we're good to go. So let's talk about different aspects of your life, Georgette. In terms of your Syrian involvement and the religion, what is it called, religious side or something? The abuse of religion, and obviously the book. When is the book coming out?
January 27th, 5 days from now.
Does Josh Shapiro...
To coincide with Holocaust Remembrance Day. Does he appear in the book?
Does Josh Shapiro know that your book is coming out the same day as his? Wow. Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania.
Not
your Josh.
I'm sure his will get much more attention than mine. So I'm grateful that you're giving it some.
All right. Let's see here. Rev, you ready?
Yeah, and we will want a website or something at the end of the program just to let listeners know where they can find the book. So we'll ask you that question. Where can they find the book? Okay. All right. Excellent. Yep. We're ready to go.
All right. Remember, Georgette, this is aired Sunday, so anything that's time-related, Sunday.
Okay.
So the book will be published tomorrow, or was it Tuesday?
27th,
that's
5 days from now.
27th. Okay. Yeah, that's Tuesday. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but on the air it will be Tuesday the 27th. All right. Elias, we're ready to go. Good morning. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And Reverend, I think we should tell all of our listeners around the country this program is brought to you tariff-free. There is no tariff on this program.
Are
thank
you
God.
Sure? But look, you never know.
When I walked into the studio, it was. When I walk out, it might be different.
Just qualify that as of today. As of today.
So, Rev, let me just say this to you. We all have personal heroes. And when I first became a rabbi, I joined the New York Board of Rabbis, and I went to the first meeting. And I walk in to this large room, and there was Dr. Billy Graham. He wasn't a member of the Board of Rabbis. He was the guest presenter. And sitting next to him was Rabbi Mark Tannenbaum, whom I didn't know. But he motioned to me because I was the youngest one at that point. He says, come up here. And I sat next to him. And later I learned that Mark Tannenbaum, this very special human being, was a major architect of interfaith relations. He participated in the drafting of Nostra Aetate, which changed, Jewish Catholic relations. Mm-hmm. And he was married to Dr. Georgette Bennett. And then I learned about her credentials. And in 2013, she founded the Multifaith Alliance, performing extraordinary humanitarian work benefiting 4 million Syrian war victims. She founded the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding, Combating Religious Prejudice, co-founder of the Global Covenant of Religions, fighting against the use of religion to promote or justify violence. And recently she authored a book entitled Half Jew, Full Life. I'm not sure what she does in her spare time, but she is another hero of mine. So I'm so honored that she's been able to come on the program. Good morning, Dr. Bennett.
Good morning, Rabbi Potasnik. And what I do in my spare time is to try to find some time to get onto your busy calendar.
That's a few of us. So let me ask, religion has inspired extraordinary acts of compassion, justice, and even self-sacrifice. Yet it has also been used as a tool for domination, violence, exploitation, and control. Where do we begin the discussion of the importance of religion, the value of it, and at the same time, a pattern of harnessing it for power?
Well, that's actually a question that I have been grappling with ever since I founded the Tannenbaum Center in 1992. How do you harness the power of religion to do good, while at the same time tamping down its power to inspire violence? And I think that it certainly begins with understanding religious texts, because there are so many texts that, if not interpreted within their historical context, and if not interpreted correctly, can be used as a justification for violence and extremism. And of course, the perfect example of that is ISIS. If you look at the ISIS playbook, which is full of supposed lessons from the Quran, but then you look at the response to the ISIS playbook from 120 Islamic scholars who took apart each one of those assumptions, you can see how religious texts can be misused, and certainly in the hands of demagogues who inspire people to commit terrible violence. But if we focus on the core values of religions, the universalistic aspects of it, I think that provides us with very good tools for getting along. And certainly one aspect of religion, in this case Judaism, that has been a very important inspiration for my work are the 40 references in the Talmud to caring for the stranger. There's only one reference in the Hebrew scriptures to loving your neighbor as yourself, because it's very easy to love somebody who's like yourself. It's much more difficult to love the stranger.
You know what somebody said years ago? The most difficult commandment is loving your neighbor. He said, especially if you have a neighbor like I have. Trying to love that person is just impossible. Georgette, let's talk about the book for a moment, because I was privileged to also know Pips that you mentioned the book. What does it mean to be half Jew, full life? How's one a half Jew? We know Jewish, non-Jewish, but I don't know about a half Jew. And what is a Mischling?
So I'll start with the first part of your question. Pips was born in Berlin to an Aryan mother and a Jewish father. So technically, he was not a Jew. He also was not a deportation case. So he could have avoided a lot of the horrors of the Holocaust. But at age 13, the very week that the Nuremberg laws were enacted, that's when he decided to become a bar mitzvah. And so by becoming a bar mitzvah, the label Jew got stuck on him. Now, Mischling, he was a Mischling first degree, which meant that he was of mixed parentage, but again, not a deportation case. And even though he was now considered a Jew, having become a bar mitzvah, as long as he was living with that Aryan parent, he was not subject to deportation. But he fell in love with a girl who was a full Jew. And so when the summons came to her family to report to Gestapo headquarters, he convinced her not to go with her family, which was about to be deported. He convinced her to go underground and go into hiding with him in Berlin. But for his entire life, he tried to shed what he called his Goyish side, his non-Jewish side. And he wanted nothing more than to be recognized as a full Jew. He said, I don't want to be a half Jew. I want to be a full Jew. And as passionate as he was about that identity, the fact is that the Orthodox branch of Judaism would not have recognized him as a Jew. And as passionate as he was about Israel, he would not have been entitled to live in Israel under the law of return.
Interesting. Here you do a book about the abuse of religion, the hatred of the other, and you're talking about someone who lived through hatred and loved his tradition and only wanted to be recognized as a member of that tradition. What a contrast that is.
I think it's interesting that, who decides whether you're half Jew or whole Jew? Is this in the hands of a religious power elite?
No, it's in the rules of one's religion. And in Judaism, one is considered a Jew based on matrilineal descent, based on your mother. Now, that's become loosened up in the Reform branch of Judaism. Patrilineal descent is recognized as well. Yeah. But that's a fairly recent development. Yeah. Would you agree with that, Rabbi?
Yeah, and it's also how you're raised. In other words, it could be patrilineal descent, but you have to be raised as a Jew. It's not just, from whom you identify with. We're going to have to take a break.
Or conversion.
We're going to take a break here and come back because I know a host of questions because I want to get into also your efforts in Syria. You know what I was thinking, Georgette? You and your late husband, Rabbi Mark Tannenbaum, you did what others probably maybe or didn't dare to do or want to do and didn't, touching, issues that some people just stayed away from, but not you and not him. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
You know that this Multifaith Alliance that I spoke of earlier, that Georgette founded, did some extraordinary work in Syria, helping victims of conflict there. And I think people looked at you, Georgette, and said, you're crazy. You're going into Syria, you're a Jew, you're subjecting yourself to such danger, and yet you were able to do remarkable work there. Talk about that effort.
Well, it was actually counterintuitive because, of course, most Syrians would just as soon see me dead as a Jew. It's not their fault. That's the way they're indoctrinated. But when Mark was very involved with the International Rescue Committee, my late husband, and very deeply involved with refugee issues. So when he died, I offered to take his seat on the board. In 2013, IRC issued a report on the Syrian crisis. And when I read that report, I was absolutely stunned by the magnitude of the suffering, especially women and especially children. And it so echoed my own family's experience during the Holocaust. And then Leviticus 19:13 just kept reverberating through my brain. Thou shalt not stand by idly while the blood of your brother cries out from the earth. And I felt I couldn't stand by idly. I felt I had to do something. And I saw an opportunity here not only to save lives. I mean, we've now delivered more than $630 million worth of aid. Most of it into Syria, but now also we're doing a lot of work in Gaza, in Turkey, in Ukraine. So it was an opportunity to save lives as well as build bridges between sworn enemies, and those enemies being Syrians and Israelis, most of whom never encounter each other except on the other end of a gun. And it was extraordinarily gratifying how hearts and minds changed. You know, I'm a sociologist. Sociology 101 says contact and communication is the way to dispel misconceptions and stereotypes. And I certainly saw that happening in these partnerships between Syrians, Israelis, Jews, Muslims, to alleviate terrible suffering. The Multifaith Alliance has more than 100 partner organizations, most of them faith-based, but also secular ones. But that certainly is a demonstration of the use of religion to do good, the use of religion to serve as the moral conscience of the world in the face of terrible suffering.
And look at what Syria and Israel, look how they're beginning to get to develop better relations with one another.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That didn't happen in a vacuum. Yeah.
No, and the Multifaith Alliance has been involved in some of that back-channel work.
I have to point to something that you said that is so powerful, and I'd love to know how you got there. This is what you said. You said it's not their fault. That's the way they were indoctrinated. How do you get there? I mean, to make a statement like that is to understand the context of the individual who is acting violently against you. Tell us how you got there.
Well, one of the ways I got there is to recognize that generally behind hate is a lot of fear, and behind fear is a lot of ignorance. And one of the ways to address hate is to do very deep listening in terms of what those fears are. But on a more, pragmatic level, all you have to do is look at the educational system. What is it that children are taught from a very early age? Now, children are not born hating. Children have to learn to hate. That's become a cliche, but it also happens to be the truth. Right. So one has to look at the mechanisms how people come to have the attitudes that they have. And then when they're confronted with the other, the object of that hatred, it's extraordinary how things can change. You know, the CEO of the Multifaith Alliance, Shadi Martini, himself a Syrian refugee who went through that same educational system and grew up with exactly those attitudes. Suddenly he was confronted with Israelis, and he wondered, what do they want? Is this Mossad? What does Mossad want from me? It wasn't. It was Israelis who had no agenda other than to help Syrians at their time of need, of greatest need. And he, like many other Syrians, wait a minute, I've been taught that Israelis want to kill me and drive me off my land. Jews are the devil because they support Israel. But wait a minute, it's not the Israelis who are killing us and driving off our land. It's our own government. And if that was a lie, what else was a lie? And also Israelis, you know, who are brought up to be suspicious of Arabs, as they encountered Syrians, they too had a complete change of heart. In fact, some of the most gratifying moments I had, we did 2 years of track 2 diplomacy with Syrians and Israelis meeting in various capitals around Europe where Syrians could get a visa to enter. And one of the Israelis brought along her young child, a toddler. And it was so beautiful to see the Syrians fussing over this Israeli baby, and Israelis and Syrians laughing together, and then Syrians coming to Israel and feeling completely at home. This is what it's about. This is what my life's work is about.
Yeah.
Well, so we have just a little more time. You know, Georgette, you mentioned you're a child of survivors. I'm a child of survivors. And we see survivors are diminishing in numbers. What does that say about our responsibility? They were witnesses to the atrocities. We're witnesses to the witnesses.
Yes. Well, that's one of the reasons that I finally wrote this book, because this is yet another story that I think needs to be told. And it's a rather different story of a survivor than many of the survivor stories. But especially in the face of Holocaust denial, it's so important to, as you said, Rabbi, to keep bearing witness. And especially with so much of what we see going on in Western countries today, Western democracies, it's really a cautionary tale of how authoritarianism can creep up on us, and how dangerous it is to be in denial and not to have eyes open when it's happening.
Yeah.
You know,
we have about a minute left. Go ahead, Rev.
We've got it. Are you going to let her go so easily, Rabbi? I mean, we've got.
I can come back. You can invite me back.
You want to stay on for another segment, Georgette? You have time?
If you will have me, I'm happy to stay.
Yeah. See what the Rev did to me? Do you see? I only thought we had Jewish guilt. See how he did it? He said, "You're just going to let her go like that? You think we should, you know?" Yeah, no, of course. All right, so we're going to come back, and we'll do more of the Rev and the Rabbi, Rev.
So stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Rebbe, I know you have a question.
I had to get another segment just to ask the question. But a question. Some people respond to religious abuse by rejecting religion altogether. And others respond by denying or minimizing the harm that it causes. Let's start with the first one. What do you say to people who just reject it altogether because of the abuses?
Yeah, you're not going to like my answer. I'm actually less afraid of them than I am of those who feel they have a monopoly on truth. Because when religion is misused, it's so often because of apocalyptic thinking that divides the world into the children of light and the children of darkness. And once you've divided the world into the children of light and the children of darkness, it's so easy to dehumanize them with hate speech, with weaponized language. And from there, it's just a very short step to violence. Every genocide that I've studied, every religicide that I talk about in my book, Religicide, began with hate speech and with dividing the world into children of light and children of darkness. Now that is the real misuse of religion.
Wow. Didn't we hear years ago about denigrate, divide, and destroy? I mean, there's a process here. The Nazis were good at it. Other hate mongers, right? It starts with the words.
It's the same process in every genocide and every religicide, without exception. Without exception. So it's very important that, in fact, there have been some studies done on this, by the way, University of Virginia. How do we use weaponized language? How do we recognize language and see it as an early warning system that's a predictor of violence so that we can intervene before verbal violence turns into physical violence? Right.
And it's a tough thing because religion represents or should I say, it brings a moral value consensus to society. So when religion is in question and abuses take place, it affects society in the erosion of trust. It wounds the conscience, right, and drives people away, not only from God, but from moral meaning itself. Agree or elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think there are those who would argue that you don't need religion to be a moral person. Atheists, agnostics, people who regard themselves as spiritual rather than religious. I think they would all argue that one can be a very moral person and not affiliate with a religion. But I think where the value of organized religion comes in, of institutionalized religion, is, as I said earlier, to serve as the moral conscience of the world. There's tremendous convening power. There are vast constituencies that can be mobilized. And if you look at the religious peacemakers that operate in conflict zones around the world, they are often, they're the ones who stay behind after the UN peacekeepers leave. So they have a very important role to play in communities. And they also often have the authority, the moral authority in their communities. Even if not everybody in that community is affiliated with an organized religion or is a believer in God, there is still a moral authority that inheres in religious leaders, unless, of course, they've been caught abusing children and doing other bad stuff.
But Georgette, I want to ask you this: you mentioned before that someone can be moral without being religious. Where does that moral foundation come from?
Well, that's the thing. I was going to ask, where is the moral authority? It's not transcendent. It's emerging from humans who we know are broken,
who've taken it from the
way.
tenets of faith.
Yeah.
Well,
how do we understand that?
Yeah, well, let me answer this in in an unusual way. You can look at the humanistic notion of God, which is that God is the outward projection of human good. Even in Judaism, there's a debate. If you look at the story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, where Abraham is commanded to slay his son as a demonstration of his faith in God. But his hand is stayed by an angel at the last minute, just as he's getting ready to drive that knife into his son. And so the debate is, what does that mean? Why is his hand stayed at the very last moment? And one interpretation is that even God cannot violate its own laws, which then leads to a further debate, and that debate is, once you have the law, do you need the concept of God? Because it is, after all, the law to which we have to adhere. So, this is a very roundabout answer to your question. Where does it come from, if not from God, if not from religion? One of the places it comes from is the law.
Yeah, but I think we do a trace. Eventually, eventually we're going to get back to religion.
Circular argument, because supposedly in Judaism the law came from God, right?
Yeah. But law is the product.
Yeah. I remember Harold Kushner, a brilliant rabbi years ago, and Georgette, I know you know of him, probably read some of his books. And, read also when bad things happen to good people. And he spoke about that scene in the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, and why God. He said, it's a lesson to all of us. Don't kill in the name of religion. And even Abraham, the first Jew, had to be taught that lesson right away in the most painful fashion, lifting up a knife to his own son because God told him, and then stopping him, saying, don't do this. Is not how a religious figure behaves. This is contrary to what we have taught. Yeah.
And that's a great interpretation.
Yeah. Is it true that there's some universal sense of right and wrong built into our conscience?
Well, Reverend Bernard, you're a sociologist, as I am.
Wait, I took sociology, and
you've got to separate.
She knows where I'm going with this question.
You've got to separate the sociologist from the Reverend, and you know how a sociologist would answer that question. A sociologist would answer that question by saying notions of right and wrong emerge differently in different societies.
By the way, I remember years ago I took Sociology 101, and they taught me, or the Professor Goldberg taught me residential propinquity. I said, wow, that's an impressive phrase. And what is residential propinquity? That you marry the person who lives next door. There was this whole theory. It was all about living close to someone, eventually having a relationship with the someone. Georgette, back to the book. What is your message in, Half Jew, Full Life? Why should people read this book?
I think there are a number of reasons that make this a worthwhile read. First of all, it's a great story. It's full of adventure. It's got sex. It's got violence. And it's a different kind of Holocaust story. This is somebody who, was a voluntary Jew. We talked about that earlier. He could have been spared all of the persecution he experienced. Second, he was arrested 4 times. He escaped 3 times, could have escaped a 4th, but realized he had nowhere to go. Third, he he was a Mischling. Almost nothing has been written about the experience of Mischlings, especially those who identify as Jewish. And the fourth difference is he wasn't only persecuted by Nazis. On several occasions, his life was saved by Nazis. But above all, it's a story of resilience. It's a story of what is identity, what is the price we pay for our identity, why do we want to hold on to an identity, and it's just relatable on a human level in so many ways. And there are, as I said earlier, there are lessons in this for what we're seeing today.
Georgette, I have no words to say thank you to, except we are really taken with your commitment. You know, whenever I read one of your books, listen to you talk to people, teach people, I always would say there's another chapter that's going to be written. It's like you've never written the last chapter of the story. There's always another chapter that's going to come, and we have to write that chapter.
We do.
Is Rabbi being prophetic?
And
I just know Georgette.
Okay.
I look forward to our writing it together, and I'm so deeply honored by the interest of both of you and inviting me to be on your show, because I have enormous admiration for both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. You gave a passage of scripture, I think it was Leviticus. What was it?
1916.
1916. Okay,
Thou shalt not stand. There are a number of translations of it, but the one I used was "Thou shalt not stand idly by."
I think you wrote a book with that title, didn't you, Georgette?
I did. I wrote a book with the title "Thou shalt not stand idly by," which tells the Syrian-Israeli story.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank
Stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Let me take a moment to say thank you to Elias Raff, who is our producer, does such a great job in allowing us to be heard throughout the country. Rev,
allowing us to be heard. I like that.
Before we talk about you, let me just mention something. There's a wonderful commentary. If you look at the portion that was read, it's about the plagues, in Egypt. If you don't remember that scene, just think Yul Brynner, and yes. Charlton Heston. I find that with people. They don't remember what's in the Bible. Well, just think of the movie, So you know that when the plagues happened, the Bible says the Egyptians could duplicate the plagues. So one of the comments says, well, if they could duplicate them, what was so great about Moses? They could do the same thing. And the answer is, they may have been able to duplicate them, but they couldn't stop them. And it's, it's one thing to bring plagues into the world, destruction. It's another thing to be able to put a stop to them. And I mention that because you spoke last week at the King Center. And obviously, here was a center named for someone who fought against injustice, who fought against the plague of hatred in America, and tried to end it. And I think that's something that we need to focus on in our time, because there's so much damn hatred out there, hatred of the other, and people have all of their descriptions of who the other is. But here we are, religion, favoring love over hate. And yet there are those who favor hate over love. So talk about what was the message?
Well, I appreciate you pointing that out. I had a wonderful time. I was there last year for the annual commemoration of Dr. Martin Luther King. It's a long day. It's about 4 hours long. It's all kinds of different speakers and prayers and songs and celebration. And I was asked by Bernice King, who's been a longtime friend of the family and I, to be the keynote speaker. And this year was quite different, Rabbi, as I sat there and heard one speaker and prayer and commentary after another. It was more than just remembering, the things that Dr. King said and did, but it was addressing the issues that we're facing today. And it was interesting because I was compelled to do the same. There's an interesting passage in Deuteronomy 32:7. It says, "Remember the days of old. Consider the generations of long past." Of course, this is one of the verses within the Song of Moses, a poetic song that God instructs Moses at the end of his life and leadership. The 40 years in the wilderness is ending, coming to an end. They're about to go into the promised land. And God gives Moses a song to teach, the Israelites before his death. And of course, people don't realize, but in the ancient world, one of the ways that they remembered history is by putting it into a song, because it was easier. I think about my ABCs. Every time, I think about something, what are your ABCs? I go back to the song that I learned as a kid, in order to get through the alphabet. But these words, and we've spoken this a few times on the air. It begins with the word remember, and that is so important. That Hebrew word, I think it's zakar. Am I pronouncing it?
Zakar. Yep.
Yeah, zakar, and it's not just mental recall or nostalgic reflection. It involves bringing something to mind with the intent, as you know, to act upon it. It's re-entering the story in a way that governs how we live today. And something that Dr. King said, because I think about what our guest said, behind hate is fear, behind fear is ignorance. And Dr. King said, and this is a statement, one of his statements that really stays with me, he said, "There's nothing more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. We have a responsibility to be intelligent." And I have to tell you, the rhetoric that we've seen in this nation has been an insult to our intelligence. The degree of sincere ignorance, and think about that. People are ignorant, but they're sincere about that ignorance, and hold on to things that are not proven, that are not substantiated, and conscientious stupidity. I mean, to be very conscientious about something and passionate about it, but it's erroneous. This is the America that we are living in. So I sought to address that, especially when it comes to revisionism in terms of our history, and I say this, Black history in America, people of color, because there's an attempt to soften the edges, to tell the story without the blood, to keep the triumph and discard the trauma. But God was telling Israel, you've got to be honest in your recollection of this history, because if you don't understand your history correctly, all right, then you're going to have trouble facing the future, because your identity is tied to that history. So when we begin to massage and change things around to make people feel better because they were involved in a negative way in that history, that becomes a problem for those who they're trying to revise history for. And this is very important.
Look, we as Jews talk about Holocaust revisionism. And there are those, the Tucker Carlsons, the Nick Fuentes out there who look at that shameful chapter and totally rewrite it. That it wasn't bad. It was exaggerated, or they distort the story. Don't blame the Germans. It was the fault of the Jews in many cases. You hear that, and what you said before about Zohar, in Jewish tradition, when we say Zohar, we add the word Shamor, to remember and keep. What is it to keep? To keep our responsibility to that story. What are we doing about it? It's very nice that we tell a story, but so what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And I think that's where your message at the King's Center, that's where when we speak, there's got to be an action item. You know, people tell you when you give a sermon, so what do you want them to go home with? You want them to go home with, what am I going to do now?
Remembering is a call to action, because how we remember determines who we become. When history is fresh, it's often painful. It has names, it has faces, it has scars. But over time, the temptation is to soften the edges, to tell the story without the blood and the trauma, as I said. And this is dangerous, because even what, is attempted to be done with the story of the Holocaust, it's attempted to be done with Black history here in America. So slavery is renamed as labor, segregation reduced to a footnote. Racial terror is explained as as exaggeration, and the ongoing effects dismisses, the reality of it as ancient history, and it robs the dignity and the humanity of the persons who've suffered through it. That's real.
After the Holocaust, there was a book that was written, "What Did You Do During the War, Daddy?" where a young person challenged a parent. All right, I've read The Horror of the Past. Where were you when all this was happening? Right. And I think all of us have to look not only in the mirror, but we have to look at our children and be ready to answer that question. Given the horror of the past, how are you going to make it different in the future?
Yeah. I love another passage, Rabbi. It says, "Remember, lest you forget."
Yeah.
So that's a dangerous thing to forget. It is a warning. It's not just an encouragement to reflect on the past, but it's a warning that if you forget that, all right, whatever you went through, it can repeat itself. And that's the thing. Unremembered injustice doesn't disappear. It returns in broken systems and mistrust, etc. So that was the point, and it was well received, Rabbi. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We come to the end of the program, but I want to thank you for sharing the message, but also to quoting all of these Jewish passages today. I didn't hear anything from the Christian till you quoted all the Jews today. It was good.
Christianity is rooted in the Jewish past. Come on.
I'm succeeding here. All right. Thank you, Rev, and look forward to more conversations, more about working together in terms of changing the direction, because the trajectory right now is not a good one. When we see the consuming hatred pervasive.
Rabbi, you and I know that we're committed to modeling cooperation, collaboration, and being able to work together without losing our identity. To have differences. Yeah. And so we hope you enjoyed our conversation today, as we hope you do every Sunday morning right here on Red Apple Radio Networks on the Rev
and the Rabbi.
He's still a little slow. Forgive him. Until next time, God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear The Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.